Hi and good morning. This is Reed from DotcomWeavers. We're going to get started with the webinar shortly. We're just checking our settings. Thank you guys for dropping by this morning. Hope you're having a good day. We'll be back with you very shortly. Okay, we're ready to go. So if at any time during the webinar you have a question, you can hit the raise hand button or send us a message in chat, send us a question. We will get back to them as soon as possible, and if there's any issues, we'll see if we can resolve them right away. So thank you for coming to our Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration webinar. We've titled it Magento 1 Endgame, How to Safely Migrate to Magento 2 Before June 2020. So DotcomWeavers, we're a New Jersey-based web design and development agency. We've been around for about 12 years, since 2007. We specialize in e-commerce development, and we are a Magento Business Solutions partner. We've been doing a lot of Magento 1 to 2 migrations in the last year and a half, and they're only picking up speed. So we thought this was an appropriate time to give a webinar about why Magento 1 to 2 is important, which we're going to go into shortly. So today on our call, we're actually missing one person. We're moving our office today from Paramus, New Jersey to Morristown. So Malay, our project manager and delivery coordinator, is actually out of the office. So it's just going to be myself, Reed Patterson, the marketing strategist here, and Amit, our CEO, and I'll let Amit introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar, and thanks, Reed, for the intro as well. So as Reed mentioned, we are a New Jersey-based web design and development company, where most of our business over the last few years has been focused on Magento. And we have clients in the Northeast corridor as well as some clients in the West Coast, and pretty much are across all verticals, servicing all kinds of industries, and they come in all shapes and sizes. And as part of this webinar today, our goal really is to focus on, the big news around the Magento circle these days is the whole migration. Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration. What does it really mean? What are, and those are some of the details we will try to get into, where we would really, and not from a technical perspective, but more from a stakeholder perspective, give you an understanding of what is really involved, what it takes, and what opportunities it brings to the table for you to really supercharge your site.
So we have a lot of topics to cover today. So first we're just going to take a deeper look at what Magento 1 End of Life is, reasons to migrate. We're going to cover the risks of staying on Magento 1, your options if you choose not to move to Magento 2. We'll talk a bit more about Magento 2 in general, its benefits, and of course the migration opportunities that Amit mentioned, for really taking your business, your e-commerce business to the next level. Then we'll take a quick look at what exactly is Magento 1 to 2 migration, what that means for businesses in terms of costs and timelines, as well as resources required. We'll take a quick look at a Magento 2 case studies, which we actually updated. So the one we have prepared in the webinar, we're going to move away from our slides and just take a look at the DotcomWeavers website. We have an exciting new client launch that we want to share with you guys, just to show you the potential of Magento 2. Finally, any questions that you have, we will cover in after our recap and during the Q&A. So again, why are we doing this migration webinar now? So we don't have an exact date, but as far as it goes, Magento 1 End of Life is scheduled for June 2020. It's we're hoping that it's sort of towards the end of the month, but what end of life means is that Magento 1, or Magento the company, is ceasing all support for Magento 1 websites. This means any kind of security patches, software updates, even the customer service is going to be very limited. So, they're basically phasing out the old platform in favor of the new, more robust Magento 2. So why this is a concern is that, one, June 2020 is, not too far away. Migrations can take, usually between 4 to 6 months, depending on the size of your site. We'll address that in detail later. So, if we're working backwards from June 2020, and let's say you have a big site and it takes 6 months, like we're at the critical phase where you want to complete your migration before support ends. Something else to consider, and real reasons to keep in mind why migration, not only for its benefits that we're going to see later, but so there are still a lot of merchants, 240,000 plus on Magento 1, and there are not that many developers out there relative to the number of businesses. So, as we get closer to June 2020 and people start thinking about the security risks involved and everything else, there's going to be a rush to migrate. So really, making this part of your plan for the next, 6 to 8 months is going to, and finding a developer you can work with is really going to behoove your business and help you, avoid rushing and, finding the right developer for you. So we talked a bit, now let's take just a quick look at the, risks of staying on Magento 1. So we already looked at the loss of software support. If something breaks, there's going to be fewer and fewer resources out there, none from Magento and fewer from the Magento 1 developer community to offer support for plugins, for your customizations, and, certain, APIs and integrations. We aren't really sure what's going to happen there, which can potentially cause a big problem for your business if you're relying on those. So there are, no quality fixes or patches. This is the end of the security updates for Magento 1. So, each week, month that goes by, you're more susceptible to, whether it's attacks or just, failure in the software. We looked at the extension and customization issues. Your extensions are going to be more and more outdated, and not only is this going to cause functionality issues, but you have to look at the opportunity cost involved in what new extensions, what new features and functions are out there on something like Magento 2. Amit, if you want to add a couple.
Oh, no, sure, absolutely. On that note itself, we are seeing a lot of M1 sites getting hacked more regularly than M2, especially because of lack of upgrades as well as patches which are out there for our current M2 sites. And this is becoming a huge concern for most of the M1 clients who are on it. And I think if you ask me, among everything else, this is the biggest risk. These days, we all know how important it is to protect your data, have trust in your customers, and one single hack can really make you lose your, customer base to a certain extent. So that's something which we think is the number one priority. Of course, when Magento 1 was launched about 10 years ago, the whole ecosystem of modules was very different, and it started evolving over the last 10 years. And a lot of the newer modules, which will really add some nice to have bells and whistles on your site, are just not going to support M1. So at that point, you have no choice but to move to M2. And this something is I consider as like the second most important reason,
Sure.
which you should be considering that for. Besides the fact that this is just a good opportunity for you to just look at your entire tech stack, upgrade it, and make sure you are, your expectations in terms of customer service and the experience is aligned with what your 2020 customer needs are.
Right, which I think thank you, Amit, which leads us into just something we wanted to touch on briefly. So if you're a Magento 1 business, let's say, you should be exploring all of your options. There are other platforms out there that, depending on your needs, and this is why you really want to, first listen to a webinar like this, and second, find a technology partner who can guide you down the right path. So there are other options, and I'm sure you've considered them, whether this is Shopify, BigCommerce, you can see them on the screen, Salesforce, or, something like Oracle. Maybe Amit, you can touch on, where these sort of stand in relation to Magento 2 and why, in some cases they might be the right option depending on your business needs, and in other cases, if it's, you may want to,
Right.
do everything you can to get to Magento 2.
Right. I mean, this, this is also, as you mentioned, being from M1 to M2 is not just a simple migration. You're pretty much starting from scratch. So as you're starting from scratch, this is also a good opportunity for you to really relook at the platform and make sure it still is the best platform for your business needs,
Right.
right? Although in our opinion, we might be a little bit are skewed in terms of favoring Magento, but we have worked with a lot of these other systems in the past as well, and it has come to our notice. I mean, we look at the pros and cons. If you have Shopify and BigCommerce in that space, I think if your needs are very simple, smaller product base, not too many complicated order fulfillment requirements, then I think they can do the job for you. But if you're looking for a robust a B2B site, and if you want some of the multi-site features as well as the enhancements which Magento Commerce brings to the table in terms of performance, the different integration environments, then I don't really see there are other softwares in the market which competes with Magento in that feature set. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Salesforce is good, and even NetSuite is. I would say it started off as an ERP, and now it's into the e-commerce space, pretty much competing with Magento. But uh, uh, we still think Magento out of the box offers a lot more native functionalities, which can really help you, scale your business without really looking at the tech stack every few years on a regular basis.
Sure, and that's what we're going to look into in the next couple of slides, is why Magento 2 is not only a powerful software platform in general, but it's also, if you're thinking of any kind of long-term strategy for your e-commerce, really growing that out, Magento 2 has a range of options and tons of potential. So here we can just talk about the Magento 2 landscape, which again I'm going to turn over to Amit because he is really our Magento 2 guru here.
So, I mean, guru is a big word, but thanks. From our perspective, it just leads back to the previous discussion I started off in the slide was, when I look at Magento 2 and the landscape and what it offers is, and we are specifically talking about Magento Commerce, but a lot of this also applies to Magento open source to a certain extent. I mean, the whole reason Magento became so popular was the active, contribution from the community, right?
Sure.
I mean, it was a platform which was initially built as open source, and there were people who were contributing to new features, new enhancements, and new security updates, which really led to, I would say, more like similar to what crowdfunding is, but from an a software space, right? And that to me has been the biggest advantage of Magento. It's is not only the platform, but the ecosystem it offers of all the extensions, modules which you can use. Because let's put it this way: any e-commerce business in this day and age, most of them don't really have straightforward needs. It's just not about add to cart, order came in and ship. I mean, there are so many things which are involved in it, whether it could be multi-channel, omni-channel, complicated shipping and order fulfillment needs, customer service expectations, and it's just not possible to do this on a manual basis these days. It's just not going to happen. You need to find a way to really automate the whole process. And we see that there's no other platform than Magento which integrates so well with all the other tools which make this happen, whether it be shipping, whether it be customer service, whether it be after sales, a lot of things which starts to put into place. One of the key advantages which we see with M2 is the implementation of progressive web apps, which I think is the next leap forward, huge leap forward in terms of technology, and where you're pretty much your site will act as a mobile app without really downloading one. Because honestly, the user expectations are changing. They don't want to download a mobile app if they don't have to. And if your site can do the job, there's nothing like it when it comes to conversion rate to be able to support something like this. Uh, and then with Magento Commerce, you're looking at some significant performance enhancements, whether it be using Fastly CDN or Blackfire IO, and those things which really enhance performance, along with the use of Magento BI, which pretty much gives you all the intelligence you need to get a deeper understanding of your customers, their buying habits, which is, in my opinion, is one of the key drivers of growth as you
Hmm.
move forward. The more you can know your customers, the better you can sell to them. And it's so, we all know it's so hard to acquire a new customer. It's so easy to just sell to existing
Right.
customers. So to me, these are the key advantages. Even from a price point, I mean, from a licensing perspective, I think Magento is very competitive, and that's something we should it should be given a thought. And obviously, you should also do your due diligence. Make sure commerce or open source, either platform you choose, is going to be not good for your business just for the current time being, but you're looking at 3 or 5 years into the horizon and keeping in mind the total cost of ownership,
Right.
because that plays a big role in a 3 to 5 year period.
Sure. And Magento, it seems like this is one of those platforms that you can work with, versus if you were on a less flexible or less versatile platform, let's say something like WordPress. You're not working. The more you add to your site, you're not requiring deeper, more complex customizations. Magento can, with the right developer, you can have everything working seamlessly together over, so you're constantly growing and scaling and not working, not struggling with your website to continue getting the service you need. So, we just, Amit definitely touched on a lot of these in the Magento landscape section, but, just some other, Magento 2 benefits in general. Since this being, Magento 2 migration webinar, we just wanted to take a look at, exactly why, Magento 2, not only to avoid the risks of staying on Magento 1, but why Magento 2 can really help your business. So the code base is, PHP 7, and, it's likely going to, be updated again as soon as the next PHP version comes out. So it's just going to load faster. You're going to get better user experiences just in terms of, how responsive, how fast it is, the way it caches all of your information, the way, it can summon your data. So you're just looking at just a straight performance increase across the board. Another major feature that is great for both customers and your administrators and your managers is the CMS and the sort of back end functionality involved. So a lot of people have as Amit mentioned, Magento 1 is a different platform. So many people remember struggling with the Magento 1 backend, making simple updates to your site, adjusting product data in product entries. This is much more user friendly, let's say.
Right. And then if I could add to this, is with M2, what you really get is the page builder, right?
Sure.
That functionality which Magento 2 has introduced I think, is a game changer when it comes to the whole CMS management. And with the page builder and the content preview, your marketing team can pretty much manage the entire site without the need of anybody technical.
Right.
Which I think is a huge leap forward, just because it gives you so much power in your own hands. Because let's get to be frank here. I mean, nobody really wants to have someone else do minor design work or make new pages if they can just do it on their own, or they can have one of their team members do it.
Right, and that's really what we strive for here at DotcomWeavers is we want you to be as self-sufficient as possible, and we want to be your technology partner when you're looking to add like a major integration to your site or a new function or a new feature. You don't need to be waiting for a day or two turnaround time to get a simple web banner updated or adding a new product. So there's a lot of value in that, just as far as cost saving, time saving, and just that feeling of control. And Amit mentioned it again. So I'm not sure exactly how many extensions there are on the marketplace anymore, but it was 8,000 or more the last time I checked, and that's constantly going up. Just due to the development community that's sprung up around Magento 2.
Right. On that note, I'll just also like to add one more thing is, yes, Magento became successful and is successful because of its ecosystem of extensions and modules.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be very careful on which ones you choose, because what you don't want to do is keep on increasing your technical debt.
Sure.
Right? Because eventually that would start affecting your performance. So that's something, again, with going into M2 as using migration as an opportunity is another thing you should be looking at it and seeing, hey, I have these three modules working on M1. Can I just do the job with just one module if I go with M2? And am I compromising something
Right.
along those lines? So this again is sort of a benefit in terms of making sure you're choosing the right extensions, because it's not about the number of extensions you have. It's more important as the quality and how much debt is it adding to the system.
Sure. You want to stay lean so you can adapt. So this is a important topic to cover here. So, a lot of businesses, if you're, if you're sort of on board with Magento in general, let's say you're Magento 1 and you need to move and you want to move to Magento 2, it shouldn't be looked at as a chore or something to get through. Magento 2 migration really offers tremendous opportunity to, if you've been thinking about, how you can, let's say you want to double your sales or you want to increase your order volume or, whatever your long-term goals are. I mean, this is really the time to, move towards technology that can help you achieve them. So again, Magento 2 is essentially a new platform. So, we can just take a look at this slide here. So here you have the opportunity to, let's say you haven't updated your site in 3 to 5 years, and sometimes more, depending on, what kind of business it is. Here's a place where you can take a look at your brand, you can take a look at your user experience, you can take a look at your content. And this is where, you can introduce yourself to your customers and to your clients and to new customers as, a more authoritative brand, as a brand that has, their best interests in mind. And even if that's the case, like for you right now, which I'm sure it is, now you can actually use technology to help them, see and feel that in every transaction and every interaction they have. So Magento 2 is fast, but if you're operating or you're using a older hosting provider or your hosting service hasn't seen some maintenance in a while, this is a great time to upgrade your hosting for better security, for faster load times, you just better backups. So again, in the process, or sorry, Amit, go ahead.
No, I agree. I mean, this is a good time to look at your hosting, but keep in mind, Magento 2 is fast, but it's also very resource hungry. So if you are choosing a hosting, they have to have experience with Magento.
Sure.
It has to be a Magento optimized host whom you can work with, and most likely running on a cloud environment like AWS, so that it can support the growth you want to strive for.
So AWS, are there any others that you might consider?
I mean, we see when it comes to cloud-based, is AWS is very widely used.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, host can vary. I mean, there are so many hosts out in the market who specialize in Magento. So that's not an issue. As long as I think it's cloud-based, I think that's what you should aim for.
Okay. Cloud-based hosting. Again, we don't need to touch on all of these. Mobile optimization, again, whether it's just a new responsive layout for your site, the Google AMP pages, the accelerated mobile pages. And if you can help more of your customers, they don't need to be in front of their desktop or laptop to shop on your site, to browse it. You can build your site from a mobile first perspective, or just make it more friendly for mobile phones. Again, better business agility, we kind of touched on this. I mean, this just, you have access to the extensions. You can do a lot of changes yourself on the, admin, again, updating products, adding new products, updating your content. I mean, that just allows you to respond and take advantage of more opportunities.
Right, and then touching upon that, as well as the next point, which talks about faster internal functions, they pretty much go hand in hand. This is a good opportunity for you to take an inside out look at your customer service, your order fulfillment. Am I, being efficient in my processes and how we are going about it? Because now you have the opportunity to pretty much automate a lot of these things.
Sure. And going into automation too, here we get into the better marketing tools. I mean, these are just whether it's integrations with a newsletter and email provider, it can integrate with your other marketing tools like I think Google.
Right. I mean, there's Yotpo, there's
Sure.
Cloud, there's so many, right?
Yeah, your
Dotmailer, you
CRMs.
can CRM, you can go into a lot of different other marketing tools, which will really see. In my opinion, the last three pretty much go hand in hand, right? You have better marketing tools so that you can give a personalized experience to your customers, and then you test so that you can repeat it again, right?
Sure.
So they keep on going as a loop because they all have to work together. As we've talked before, I mean, the key here is, I think beyond a certain point, price doesn't play a role. What
Mhm.
what really makes a difference is the experience. What is the customer getting out of it, right? And how do you give something which is much catered to their needs, which is where now you can look at search, how you can implement AI-based search, which is part of, how can you do A/B testing on your clients on your site to is to and this is again a great opportunity to pretty much as we spoke, start from scratch, looking at all these different factors which would play a huge role in your e-commerce strategy moving forward.
Sure. And at the end of the day, you also want to take a look at what are your competitors in your industry or in your space doing. Where is their technology relative to yours? If Magento 2 can be a ideal solution, not only for all of the things we discussed so far, but also as sort of a tactic to either get ahead of the competition or to compete. So these are all considerations, where you can really see like the value in a migration, not just as something that you need to do just to keep your technology current.
Right. That's an important point. It is just, M1 to M2 should not be just looked upon as something you just have to get done. And so, you know what? You have to be excited about it. You have to know that this is an opportunity to really relook at everything you have done. And I'm pretty sure you will find a lot more things which were not happening before to bring on to the table now.
Sure. And again, when you find the right developer and you say, you can ask them like, hey, can I do this? Can I, do split shipments? Can I, ship internationally? Can I, have the just intelligent product sourcing? I mean, all of these things, can and be customized, can be done. So, here's this is probably going to be like the most technical slide, but we'll talk about it briefly, just so you understand, what exactly a Magento migration entails and how it works. Then we'll get into the cost and timeline.
Sure. I mean, we wanted to sound and look technical. That's why you see this flow chart. But it's in other words, it's pretty simple. I mean, it gives you an idea of where you think what can be carried over and what really requires you to really relook at things.
Right. Because, just we are starting from scratch. Some content, your database can be ported over. It may need some adjustment. The core functionality, your e-commerce capabilities, everything, and the design, that can be updated. We've discussed that. Or if you like your old one, it can be rebuilt. So some of these things can, sort of have a one-to-one or close to a one-to-one, Magento 1 to Magento 2 life cycle. Others, though, which is something that everybody needs to consider, is that your Magento 1 extensions cannot be ported to Magento 2.
Right, and the same thing goes, of course, from the big scheme of things, if you ask me, database is, you don't have to worry about your content, your product data, and think about, what's going to happen to it when you move to M2. Do I have to do it again? That's something you can definitely easily port over,
Sure.
right? I do think based on our experience with clients and all the migrations which we have done so far, we do see there's a huge opportunity in some cases to really update the design, which I think all of our clients who have gone with migration have chosen to do at this point. The core functionality remains the same unless you really want to change something majorly on the site, right? Of course, you're upgrading all the extensions, the customizations, nothing can be ported over, and debugging launch is that's a very important part. I mean, although it's still Magento, the whole system is very different. The whole skin is different. So that's something you have to be able to keep in mind as you're going through this migration.
And again, though, going back to the theme of opportunities, is you may not want to port your Magento 1 extensions because there might be something leaner, more flexible, more powerful among the Magento 2 extensions. So again, this is a great time to talk to your developer, talking about like, all right, what are the absolute essentials and then what are the nice to haves? And then, we can find the extension for you. We can customize it and make everything work seamlessly. So again, these are, this Magento to migration really is an opportunity to, expand your digital footprint and, give your customers the best e-commerce experience and help you manage your business. So as far as the Magento, I mentioned a range of, sort of 3 to 6 months, depending on the size of your site for your Magento 1 to 2 migration. We follow, a structured, every client, every business has its own requirements, but at the end of the day, it is we do have a system in place. I think you'll find that a lot of other developers, will follow something similar, where before we move into any of the design development, we take a deep look at your Magento 1 site. We look at your data. We look at any requirements, and we want to make sure that Magento 2 migration is the right solution for you. We take a look at your industry and your competitors to see where we can give you an edge, and where there's room for improvement. We'll put together someone like Malay, who we mentioned earlier, who would be a Magento solution specialist, would help put together a functional scope. This takes about 3 to 4 weeks. It can be faster, depending on your site, and this will lay out everything involved in your Magento 2 migration, all of the the standard procedures that we follow, as well as any kind of customizations.
I mean, I think as we keep on stressing the fact, and is use this opportunity to really take an inside out look at your whole ecosystem in terms of the stack, right? The functional scope and functionality is a key component. You want to make sure a lot of time is spent on it, and so that it is addressing what you want this migration to do. And this migration has to be exciting. It just doesn't have to be a process. It's not something you have to do. It's something you should be looking forward to doing, right? So functionality, you want to spend time on it. You want to make sure your requirements document covers all the new bells and whistles you want, or some of the things which were really wrong with the older with M1 or your older implementation, and you want to remove it. This is the time to really do this properly. We would highly recommend not to rush. Look, if you are a stakeholder, and whether it be everybody wants to get it done as fast as possible, but that's not always the right solution. That's actually never the right solution, right? So the key is not to get it done just about being how fast you are. It's about how good you are in terms of making sure you're addressing what your customers want. You're addressing what you see the future holds to a certain extent, and then of course building upon a solid foundation so that you can grow on it.
Sure. And then the migration timeline, follows a standard website build. Really, once we have that functional scope in mind, we'll migrate your core functionality. We'll implement the new design, and then we will do any final customizations and integrations of your extensions, update modules, and then of course test it. We have our Magento certified developers who will be taking a look at your site, making sure that every possible eventuality or every possible circumstance in terms of how people interact with your site, including your admins, is taken care of. We'll take a look at that in a staging environment. We'll make sure that your current Magento 1 site is backed up, and then from there we go to website launch. So again, you can see that from this timeline, these are rough estimates in terms of how long this will take. But I mean, just from don't lose sight of the fact that it can take time to find the right Magento development partner. So you want to start doing your research now, because let's say your migration takes on average 4 months to accomplish, maybe 4 to 5. It may take some time for you to get to sign a contract, to get find someone you're comfortable with. So give yourself some buffer time.
Right, and just keep in mind, any migration, anybody who thinks they can do a migration in less than 3 months is just not going to happen. We have not seen this happening in any case, and if that happens, that's where you would end up cutting corners. So you want to make sure you are maintaining a realistic timeline with whoever you're working with, so that it's and plus there has to be some buffer because you just don't know what's going to
Sure.
pop up, right? And as far as testing is concerned, when you're doing, depending upon the site traffic and how it's going, you do want to utilize a lot of third-party tools, especially to make sure the speed is optimized, the site is able to manage the load, and there are tools like New Relic, Blaze Meter, as well as your host, which will allow you to run appropriate load tests. And from that perspective, so that's, you have to always keep in mind. From a cost perspective, again, that's a question which
Yeah,
everybody has.
we want to be transparent.
And we want to be transparent, and for that we have built an estimator tool which is right on our site. Plug in the some of the information and it will show you a cost right away. We try to be as open and as transparent as possible in that process. It's not the best benchmark, but it will be a close enough estimate for you to understand.
Sure, and again, just DotcomWeavers, we've done quite a few Magento 2 migrations. We are a Magento, solutions partner. So, if you use the estimator on our website, it's at DotcomWeavers.com. You'll see a link to it right at the very top of the site. You can get a ballpark figure, and if you go to another developer and you ask them for a similar, this is the cost and timeline that you should expect, or in a general space. If it seems drastically higher or lower, their quote, you can always reach out to us as well, and we can just take a quick look at the information you're getting. So before we conclude the webinar, we wanted to share with you a migration case study. However, we just launched a new Magento 2 site for a client of ours that we're really excited about. I'll let Amit take you through it. It's called Cutting Edge Stencils. They sell custom-made stencils that you can apply to your walls in your home or any other interior space or exterior, depending on what materials you're using. And they're an interesting case where they had a massive social media following, truly massive. And their e-commerce, they were struggling along with the Magento 1 site that had been maintained by I think 1 or 2 people, and they came to DotcomWeavers because one, they knew they needed to migrate, but 2, they again saw the value and the opportunity in a migration.
Right. I mean, this is something has been very exciting journey for us. They are also, I think one of the largest stencil manufacturers in the country for wall art, with a huge social media following. So pretty much, yeah, all eyes are on you when you're doing something like this, because when you have close to 500,000 social media followers across different channels, when you launch a new site, you will be critiqued a lot.
Sure.
And for us, that was also a lot of pressure to make sure we lived up to the expectations. But if you ask me, the key here was the success here was making sure we took the time to understand what their requirements were, what their needs, what their current pain points were, and how are we going to address it in Magento 2.
Right, and
right?
We covered the one of the issues that people have with Magento 1 or just your technology partner in general is the lack of control. They were on Magento 1.93, I believe it was, and anytime they needed to make an update on their site, they had to send an email. They had to wait for people to get back to them. It was just a drawn out process that with something like Magento 2, they could be making those updates in a matter of minutes.
Exactly, and it's been, I think, about 6 weeks after launch. If I have to tell you some of the key metrics, there was no downtime. The site launch was as smooth as you could imagine. We picked a time when we knew, based on analytics, what was the slowest period for them in terms of their sale in the traffic. It was done from that perspective. I would say the key, no downtime. And if we compare the last 6 weeks to the previous 6 weeks, we see a 10 to 15% rise in conversion rate.
Sure.
Which to us has been the biggest metrics of our success in this launch. At the end of the day, you as a business or as a stakeholder, that's all you really care about. What is my ROI? Why should I invest all this money? Why should I go through this whole painful process? And what to expect towards the end? for us, we are more than happy to share some more examples. And this is not only one. I mean, we launched another one, and we're seeing the same results. The conversion rate boost has been nothing less than 10% increase, which itself, if you look at it, ends up paying for the entire migration, within the first few weeks. I won't say everything is a breeze. You have to make sure you do your homework in terms of your requirements. You do your homework in terms of testing, making sure you test the hell out of it. That's the key. As much as time you can spend on testing without cutting corners, you will see the results would be very fruitful, and it will speak for itself. That's something which we have really worked pretty hard on. They are now on M2 2.3 running on AWS, and pretty much utilizing all the key functions with Magento 2.3 comes with.
Sure. And Amit, just thank you for sharing that about cutting edge stencils. But maybe for the audience now, could you just tell us a little bit about how big the site was, and how long did this take? Were there any hiccups involved?
So I mean,
just to give people a transparent look at what a migration actually entails.
From a site big perspective, so big is relative, and logically, what we look at really is the site gets more than 100,000 visitors a month, which I think is substantial traffic, which relates to substantial sales. And what was key here was we took a measured approach. There are two approaches we took here. First, we put a band-aid on their existing site. It was important not to lose sales while M2 was being worked upon.
Sure.
So when we came in, there were lots of performance issues with M1, and our job was to really make sure we can stop the bleeding while we work on this. So we spent the first 6 weeks just trying to do that. And then the whole process ended up taking about, I would say more like about 20 weeks.
Okay.
About 16 to 20 weeks when we were all ready to launch the new site. And that's pretty much how you should look at it. And if you ask me the complexity of the site, it would fall into the medium complexity.
Sure, I see they have a couple integrations, shopper approved, the Google product feeds, and what was the last one down here?
Right. I mean,
ShipStation integration.
Yes, and if you ask me, this was only for the launch. Then we had a staggered approach towards launch. So after launch, in the last 6 weeks, I think we just did it this week, we have added Yotpo as a review management. We have added Amazon Pay. We are adding the Instagram shop. All that is just flowing into the same Magento backend. So we had a plan on what we wanted to do for the phase 1 launch, and then we had a plan what we would do 6 weeks after launch, which is what we are following through.
Right. So for our listeners, is cutting edge stencils. Even before their site launch, they were already looking at their Magento 2 migration as sort of an asset for their business, planning where they were going to go next. We wish them very good luck.
I mean, if we already have a whole list of phase 2 for them, once now that you're M2, your opportunities are so much more in terms of, adding more and more, customer friendly feature set to your site.
Sure.
That's how we look at it.
So again, thank you guys for listening. We're going to just take a quick recap of the webinar. If you have questions, you can please post them. We'll take a quick look at them. So yeah, again, this was a Magento 1 to 2 migration webinar. Magento 1 End of Life is coming sometime in June 2020. Let's just say the middle of the month, June 15th. And with Magento 1 End of Life, which sounds scary, but at the same time, this is a loss of support. This is the end of security updates. This is a greater security risk for Magento 1 sites. Again, there's also an opportunity cost involved. Hopefully now that you've listened to this webinar, and I'm sure you've done your own research, is you can see that Magento 2 is really a future-ready platform that we anticipate being a viable option for the next 7 to 10 years, just like Magento 1 was in its
Right. Well, we're being overly optimistic. So when Magento came in, right, the e-commerce space was I would say still amateur. Things were getting in. M2 being into the picture, we are seeing with Adobe's acquisition of Magento, they are being very aggressive in this space in terms of new updates, new feature set, and the things which are coming in. The goal really is to really make sure, we hope if it's up to me as a business owner, I would not like to upgrade for the next as many years as possible. Right. But if it's going to give me the right bang for the buck in terms of ROI, I would upgrade tomorrow. Yeah, and that's how you have to approach it from a fresh look. There is 2.33 out already, and which has a lot of features, which which is a lot more than when Magento 2 started, and Magento 2 was 2.5 years old. I think it's been there. So we would say the journey has been pretty good. It is painful and it's daunting to really keep on thinking about upgrades and patches all throughout.
Sure.
But then on the other hand, your site is your main selling engine. You want to make sure it's a well-oiled machine, which is kept properly to really give you the desired results.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's how I would look at it. The risks are pretty obvious. It's really up to you how long you want to have that, what your risk appetite is. And to us, just looking at the launches which we have done recently, we see the benefits far outweighs the risk. The whole concept of being able to, the fact that we are seeing a rise in conversion rates is our biggest indicator that this is the right move for businesses.
Sure. All right, well, thank you for that, Amit. And thank you everybody for listening to our webinar. So again, we are DotcomWeavers. We're a Magento business solution partner. We've done more than 100 Magento websites just in the last few years. We've been working closely with several clients on their migrations, and there's more to come. So at this point, I'd like to first say that as a Magento solution partner and someone who is invested in helping e-commerce companies perform at their best, you can reach out to DotcomWeavers, info@DotcomWeavers.com, or visit our website, DotcomWeavers.com, to reach out for two things. One, you can get just a free assessment. We would love to take a quick look at your Magento website, and we can help tell you what direction might be ideal for your business. You can ask us your questions, and hopefully we can provide some answers, and whether DotcomWeavers is the right partner for you, or whether you go elsewhere, you'll at least be armed with knowledge that can help you make the most of your migration. The second thing we wanted to mention that Amit touched on earlier is, we've built a Magento migration cost and timeline estimator tool. This takes less than 60 seconds to use. You can drop onto our website, look at the top of the page, click into our estimator, and fill out a few simple questions that, what version of Magento 1 are you on? How many products do you have? What level of customization is your current Magento 1 site? There's a lot of questions on there, or a handful of questions on there anyway, and you'll get a instant ballpark figure of what a timeline and what the cost would be for a site like yours. From there, you'll have that report that you can then take to other developers. You can chat with us about it, or you can just share it internally. And that way you'll at least it's a great first step in your migration journey. So we encourage everybody to use that. And again, if you have any questions for us, please let us know. One thing that I wanted to ask Amit before we turn it over is, if as a business owner, going to a developer, what are your sort of top 3 questions about migration? I'm not sure if there's any topics we didn't touch on here, or.
I mean, top 3 would be hey, first I want to know what are my key benefits. How is it going to improve my bottom line, right?
Sure.
How quickly will I, see my ROI? I mean, those are the things which comes to me first. How painful is the process?
Mm-hmm.
When I say painful, what that means is how involved do my people have to be in? Because they are already running their existing business now, which means whatever you're doing on a day-to-day perspective, now you have this headache of the migration, which falls on as additional job responsibility.
Sure.
Right. So the level of involvement needed, that's something I would like to know. And then of course there's this timeline and cost involved, right? Cost, I think, can be understood if you can clearly understand, visualize the ROI of where it could go. Timeline could be a key to make sure, depending upon what your needs are. But I would say just don't rush it. So make sure you give yourself enough time, and that's how you should plan it.
Okay. And so with that, we want to thank everybody for joining the webinar. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Again, if there's anything, if anything you need from DotcomWeavers, just as a Magento partner and a developer who really has the best in mind for any e-commerce business, we'd be happy to assist you in any way we can. We hope this webinar was informative, and we hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Any concluding words?
No, I mean, I think we covered all the topics. We would tell you this much as this webinar is not really to self-promote ourselves. This webinar is really to make sure that we can educate the people on the whole migration process.
Sure.
And as Reed mentioned, we are a good fit for some clients and we are not a good fit for some. So it depends, but if we can educate you in this whole process, that's what we are trying to look forward to.
Sure. And we wish you the very best of luck on your migration journey, wherever it takes you. So thank you, everybody, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.